with younger people, especially, like, they're addicted to their cell phones. It's almost like they don't have the patience to get through the car deal or pay attention to the customer, the guest, to give them the experience that I think that the customer deserves. They say, oh, well, the consumer wants to text. They want to text. They want to text. I think that's a lie we tell ourselves, to be honest with you. Sorry about that.
He obviously agrees with you. He obviously, I shouldn't text. Like, I want to talk, right?
They were good all morning, and now they're going to be bad.
He's like, I don't like that podcast voice, okay? I don't like hearing it, okay? I don't like it.
Are you wasting your time and money on inefficiencies in the business? Are sales down and lead conversion rates are low? Are you having problems building or maintaining inventory levels? What does it really take to win in the automotive industry?
Get the cars that make sense for your store rather than just wishing at an auction. So it gives you that better control.
With over 25 years of experience, Darrell the Wolf Steed isn't just another industry voice. He's the guy who's out there solving real problems for dealers just like you.
They'll even say in the Pacific Northwest where you're at that it's a tougher market. It's, it's tougher to find cars. The market's a little bit softer. And in the midst of all this, your turn doubled and your profit's up 75%.
Yes.
The truth hurts only when it should. Are you ready to hear the truths? Darrell is here to unpack the hard truths and the proven strategies that will take your dealership from struggling to soaring. And he is taking it all in the streets, with real talk, open dialogue, unfiltered conversations. This is the podcast series, Street Smarts, powered by Smartwolf Consulting.
Hello, everybody. This is Darrell Steed here with Street Smarts, powered by Smartwolf Consulting. I am your host, and today we are getting an absolute true gem of the car business. Her name is Missy Ballance. Now, it is my job to make sure that you guys know exactly how fantastic our guests are, so I'm going to go over a couple things with you so you know what you're getting today. Missy Ballance got the nickname and will always be the number one rock star in the industry. Hands down, one of the best hires I ever made. So listen, I'll be 100% honest. I am humble at the fact that she continues to make me look like a genius and all things that she does. She is probably one of the most vibrant forces that I've ever seen in the industry, and doing it in the most simplistic way to create that connection with people. She started, and I know this is going to be hard to believe when you guys hear what she has to say, as an intern. Not even a real employee, an intern at Enterprise Rent-A-Car back in the 90s. This is when we had like Guns N' Roses, Nirvana. Most of these bands you guys wouldn't understand if you were born after that. Okay, and then transitioned, okay, to the classroom of the dealership with a degree in human development in Sacramento. Like, human development, I don't understand what that means because I'm still developing, so maybe that's why I don't get it. But she has that one of those things that like we hear all the time, but we actually get to see, which is a heart of gold. She really cares about everything she does, the people around her, her circle, her people. We actually had a conversation today about that before we got on here. And lucky enough, okay, to work with this type of champion, okay, Missy has moved her way up from a lowly salesperson, okay, into finance, into learning every other type of situation in the auto industry, to be now a general sales manager of Ford of Fairfield, one of the largest Ford stores in the Northern California area. Sprinkling, okay, one of what we would call her unique brand of humor and connection with customers, all while sipping, okay, some coffee, because you'll always see her with coffee in hand. So let's buckle up, dive into the discussions, tips, and I would imagine a few laughs with the one and only Rockstar, Missy Ballance. Let's hit the road, guys. Thank you, Missy, for getting on the podcast, giving me the opportunity to yet again feel like a genius for getting you into the auto industry and showing us all exactly how right we were.
Thank you for having me. You always embarrass me every time you see me because you're always telling people that I'm a rock star. So then I got a lot to live up to, but I appreciate you having me. It's good to be here.
All right. Well, guys, just so we understand everything, okay, I told my wife this morning, okay, Missy somehow doesn't understand this, and neither does my wife, but let's make it clear on video so people can see this. I am a terrible liar. So they think I'm embarrassing them, and all I'm just doing is telling them the truth. Unfortunately, I don't think they're used to hearing the truth. They're hearing people lie. So when I say they're great and they're rock stars and beautiful, it's because if I tried to tell them anything else, it would be a lie. Okay, so let's
Stop.
get this going. Okay, and as you can see, the level of blushing is fantastic. So we have effectively done our job at making sure Missy knows just how important she is to the industry. Now, Missy, we want to always start everything with, like, where are you winning in life? What is going well? And if it's in the industry, great. If it's not, where are you winning? Like, why do you do what you do? What makes you kind of like excited every day because you're winning, you're championing it?
When I first got into the business, it really was about money. I got into the business because I needed to make money and I needed to make money fast. And I remembered I had been good at it when I was at Enterprise. So I thought I would do it for a year, make the money I needed to make, kind of get us out of the hole we were in. It was the recession in 2008. And it has become a lot less about the money. The most important thing for me, and I think we do a good job of this, is taking young people. Like I always say, the car business is kind of like the island of misfit toys from that movie Rudolph. So it's a whole lot of people that maybe don't fit in anywhere else. And then they all come together and they create the car business. And so you have this group of people that maybe necessarily couldn't make a really good living or support a family or even support themselves if they didn't stumble into the car business. And then we can teach them the skills that they need for sales. And then next thing you know, they've got a blossoming career and they're financially well off and they can get, whatever it is they need, whether it's housing or dental work or taking care of their family or their kids or contributing to their family, maybe their multifamily home or something like that. So that's my favorite part of the car business, is just how you can turn somebody's life around because it's lucrative. And that's the bottom line. You don't have to have a college degree. So you can start tomorrow.
I think that's, wow. It's kind of crazy to hear. In today's world, if you guys didn't pay attention, hit rewind for a second, because we just heard Missy talk all about her winnings, like what really gets her going in the industry. And I didn't hear one time about selling more cars, profits, or anything else. I heard giving people opportunities, bringing people together, giving those people, showing people there's a way that they, whether it's taking care of themselves, empowering them where other people didn't, they gave up on them. When we think about that in the auto industry, that's kind of, let's just go ahead and say it what it is. That's a unicorn type of theory. It's like the one in the million of people understanding that people are what drive our business, the experience, the connection, and not the result. We hear a lot of people talking about we're here to sell cars and we're here to grow the business. And you're like, we forget about the core of it and we don't focus on it, right? We always focus on that result. We never focus on the start. So I absolutely think it's great that in all these years, by the way, when I first got the opportunity to hire Missy, you guys, and she talks about it was for the money, I'm going to tell this story because it might be one of the funniest things there. She comes in, when she wanted to make money, and it's a lot of money, I'm about to say this, but it's not in the scheme of the auto industry. She wanted to make $4 or $5 grand a month. She made probably close to double that, in the first month or two. And even came to me and wanted to make sure it wasn't a mistake. And then said hey, is this what I'm going to be? And it was kind of one of those things. I was like, man, we messed up. We could have put her on salary. And she was
I remember people saying oh, remember so-and-so, they used to be in the car business, or remember so-and-so. And I'm like, why do people leave this business? I don't understand. And I remember having that conversation with you 10 times. Okay, so if this is all it is, why do people quit? Where's the bad part? When's the bad part going to happen? And it's just never happened for me.
But I think that's the difference, right? When you saw that first check and you were like, is this a mistake? Now, just so everyone understands, okay, it wasn't a mistake. She actually had a few deals left off her thing because we were waiting for funding. So
Yep.
She had more money made. But then after that, she was like this. She's like, oh, I was like, well, if you want to, we can put you on salary. She's like, no, we're good. I'll go ahead and take my chances.
I got this. I'll take the chance.
When we say, is it hard and why hasn't that bad part happened? Some people experience the bad part, right? Some people don't. And I think it's a frame of mind. I think it's also an attitude. So I had a guest on, Timothy Glover, absolute hero in the industry, not in the industry, but in life. And what he said is you're either born with that drive or you're not. You can learn processes, you can learn those things, but you either have that drive to win or you don't. And where it really comes down to is when things go bad or they don't go the way we think they're going to go, do you have that ability to handle the chaos or organize the chaos without going like this, oh, Chicken Little, the world is falling, the sky is falling. And if you're one to like over dramatize something or look at the negative, you're going to experience more bad because that's where you put your frame of mind. If you look at it as like, hey guys, it's just part of the business. And guess what? We got another opportunity coming in and another opportunity coming in. Then it changes how you look at it. So,
and at this point in my career, I can honestly say that, you know, I've read a lot of books. Because this wasn't what I was educated in. Like you said, I was educated in child development, human development. So wasn't my field of study. So since then I've read a lot of books, and it is sometimes hard to keep your head straight, but with the right mentor, and if you surround yourself with the right people, it works. And I leaned on sales trainers. I leaned on YouTube. I leaned on social media in order to kind of keep my head straight in the down times. And I think it's really smart to do. And I just think you have to also be somebody who is open to having a mentor and open to having somebody who can tell you how to do things better and do things right. So,
well, and that kind of goes into the next question. Like, what do you see, and specifically in the auto industry, like, where do you see the biggest challenge, like that you see every day, both in your store, the industry, where it's one of those things where it almost seems like no matter how you attack it, it always seems to be there?
Probably cell phones right now. Cell phones are a problem. I know that sounds crazy, but with younger salespeople in particular, they are like addicted to their phones. I'm sorry.
You're fine. Hey, this is real life. We're in the streets.
Yeah, I got dogs. Okay, so with younger people, especially, like they're addicted to their cell phones. So it's almost like they don't have the patience to get through the car deal or pay attention to the customer, the guest, to give them the experience that I think that the customer deserves, without kind of like breaking away to check their phone really quick or something like that. So cell phones for me are a problem. The other thing is that like texting is a problem. I think it's a problem that people don't pick up their phone and call anymore today, right now in this industry. They say, oh, well, the consumer wants to text. They want to text. They want to text. I think that's a lie we tell ourselves, to be honest with you. Sorry about that.
He obviously agrees with you. He obviously I shouldn't text. Like, I want to talk. Right?
They were good all morning, and now they're going to be bad.
He's like, I don't like that podcast voice. Okay, I don't like hearing it. Okay, I don't like it.
I think it's a lie that we tell ourselves that people want to text. I don't think they do.
We're talking about phone calls. I think it's interesting, right? Because when we're talking about text and phone calls, text is obviously an easy way to communicate, right? And it is one of those things that we know people like to do. But I agree with you, right? Like when it comes to phone calls, text should be that after the conversation, after we've established that connection. Text and phone calls, right? Text is great. But how many of you guys have ever thought about with text that it's misconstrued, it's misperceived? So we're talking about that text, Missy, and like you send the text, and how many times, right? We have our phone and we do this and we go, and then someone gets upset in our personal lives and they're like, I can't believe you said that. And you're like, I look back at it and I'm all, I just asked you how your day was.
Literally.
How they perceive it. Now, guys, texting's fine. We're not telling you not to do that, but you have to establish a connection first and have those conversations so that they now know this is not out of malice. They establish a connection. Now it's just you do a little bit of practice, right?
Yeah, I think that I think that our salespeople are scared to have like front interaction with people. So I found that sometimes if I don't stand out front, they'll let people leave. So they'll be standing on the lot telling them, I'll text you that. I'll send you that. I'll show you that later. And then they want to come inside and say, oh, they had to go to lunch or they had to leave really quick. And, you know, we all know what to say to get our manager off our back. But the thing is what they're missing is what they're afraid to do, which is have the face-to-face communication where they learn based on the body language or the feedback where the customer's at. So if they're not going to present the numbers in person because they're afraid and they're just saying like, oh, I'll send you that later, they're missing that opportunity to understand where the customer's coming from. And I think it's cell phone culture ultimately is what that comes back to.
Well, it's interesting you talk through the addiction to cell phone. I'll be 100% honest. That's one that you don't hear very often. But hey, we're in the streets, right? You're seeing it every day. And I think it's an interesting situation because when you talk about that, like if I'm in a deal with a client and I'm constantly looking at my cell phone, right?
Or getting anxious because you feel like you need to go look at your cell phone. Like it's been a few minutes, it's been 20 minutes, it's been 30 minutes. They're not approved yet. What do? I need to go to my cell phone. No, you don't.
Well,
Go sit back down and ask them about their pets.
Well, I think it's that too, right? Is that you go, okay, so they don't, like, they're not the focus, right? Like something in your life's the focus. So we're not even using, like, even if you have a good experience, you're disconnecting from that customer when they're making, and as we all know, 30 to 40% of the time, this is the largest spend that most people are going to make because not everyone's a homeowner or investor or anything else. So when you think like that, it's like, okay, so this could be for 40% of the customers, their largest expenditure of their life or they do in their life. And you haven't made them the center of attention. You haven't given. So when you talk about that, of the young people understanding, if you said like, hey, this is going to cost you $1,000 if you don't make them center of attention, would they change their behavior? Right. And I think then all of a sudden it becomes one of those like, hey, guys, you got to treat this job, or you have to treat this interaction like a professional, right? You don't see a doctor. Let's use a dentist, for example, right? Because everyone's a dentist who likes it. Dentist is in there working on your mouth. And he's like, 1 second. Hey, will you hold this for me? Oh, sorry. I had an Instagram alert. I had to check that, right? They're working on your teeth. Their phones put away, right? They're a real professional. So when we think about like the automotive general and business, right? And you're talking about that disconnection, right? And that's where I like to live. The reason I created this podcast, and I've got some products that are coming out to help dealers, is the experience, right? I have a hard time focusing on the results. And the reason why is the results are a byproduct of all the other things. And so I think everybody says like, we need to do this, and this is where we want to be. But no one ever has the conversation of, well, I don't care about this. If we do these 4 things right, it would be near impossible for this not to happen. And so, it's kind of shifting that experience over to, I like to focus on used cars. Not that new cars aren't important, but they're not. Because, used cars obviously influence so much more than new cars do. Is what do you see in the market right now? Like you're at a big Ford store, a large footprint too. You guys have a huge store. And when it comes to used cars, trade-ins, acquisition, auctions, things what are you guys seeing right now in your particular market and like in your store in general?
So, I know a lot of people kind of like to sing the sorrows and talk about how we're missing 2 years worth of cars from the market because of the COVID slowdown and the COVID commodity restrictions and things like that. But honestly, I think if you're not looking for it, you're not even going to see it. Like it's business as usual. Let's go. Let's roll. And to be honest with you, we're in this kind of really unique time in the market where the manufacturers are starting to provide us with incentives on new cars, which is therefore, discounting the new car, and used cars are still holding a lot of value. So as a consumer, if you're a consumer, it's a great time to be in the market for a used car because you're going to get the highest trade value that you could possibly get for your used car, and you're going to get a great used car.
So when you're talking about, so you've got those incentives, right? And used cars come in, and yeah, used cars, what we know to be true, and I agree with you. If you're using like, well, COVID changed the market. Well, good to see that you've paid attention to the last 5 years of business. Yes, COVID did something we've never seen before. It took a used car market that typically depreciates at percentages per month as the year goes on, and it actually made a depreciative asset appreciate, which we've never seen. In 100 years of industry, we've never seen used cars go up in value as an industry. That happened. And then, of course, dealers did what we all anticipated. They got greedy and sold them even above those prices. So yes, we changed the dynamic. We changed the inventory back in because now people are in it a little bit heavier than they would be. And so it takes longer to get them back to balance. However, I agree with you. It's, one of my, we'll call it frenemies, right? Because we like to mess with each other. David Long, he says we make our own economy. And I wish I could give him shit about it, but I actually agree with that statement every single time he says it, is that we hear, oh, this is high, that's high, this is high, we can't do it, this can't do this, we can't. And I'm like, at the end of the day, like if you didn't know any of those things, you never turned on a TV, you never heard any of that, would it really change what you're doing? Would you just steam forward and say, hey, you know what? Something's changed. I don't care. I'm just going to go do what I need to do. Right. It's a mental focus. So
So because used car values are high, so is your trade-in value. So your trade-in value is high. Yes, they kind of go hand in hand, right? So you're going to pay a little more for a used car maybe than you would have 5 years ago, but you're going to get more for your trade than you would have 5 years ago. So those two things go hand in hand. Now, if you're in the market for a used car, they're discounted. Yes, but the prices of new cars have gone up 20%. So it's a great time to be in the market for a used car. Are used cars high? Yes, but so is your trade-in value.
And I think that's great to revisit because, yeah, I mean, obviously not in the time of COVID where like you could just throw out a number and it all worked, because I mean, you have to kind of take that as like if we were grading on a curve, you have to basically take out that one spot because that's like it ruins the whole thing. But when you look at everything, the market has stabilized. What we're seeing that I think dealers struggle with is the compression, right? Is that, yeah, you're paying up for a car, but they're still transacting at this price because affordability, right? People can only afford so much payment. So it's still what you could buy this car for 3 years ago. Now you're paying up here, but it's still selling close to the same market value. So you just make a little less. Now, I don't think that's really an issue. What I think it's done is made dealers stop being so focused on what they call the front gross. And they now have to understand that a used car helps your fixed operations, front gross, finance or back end. And then it also helps customer acquisition, helps with advertising because you're getting cars that you wouldn't have to go to the auction for. So it's also an expense reduction if you're not paying it to auction fees. Well, when you look at that, is like, are you measuring the indicators that have changed to see like, oh, if I took in trades, and I use this analogy, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is people will call me and I said, okay, look, this is kind of how you have to look at private property acquisition from a base level, not getting into the weeds, but I have transporters with 100 cars on them right now. They're all cars that have a 60-day market supply or less. So these are all good cars, and I can drop them off to you. You get all of them. But here's what you have to understand. You're going to make zero profit on the front end. You're going to average $2,000 in back end or finance, and you're going to make $1,500 in fixed on each one of these cars. Do you want all of them or none of them?
Right.
And every dealer always says like, well, I want all of them. I'm like, okay, well, if you believe that, right? Because that's the dealer that understands, like, I understand there's profit made in multiple different ways. If you want all of them, why aren't you then attacking the used car market like that? Like, why are you saying like, I see dealers all the time, like, I'm going to try to rip this vehicle, or I'm going to pay 60% of market. And then you go, where else are you able to do that? You're not. So why would you lose that opportunity?
And I always try to think when I'm appraising a vehicle, I always try to consider who my end user is, right? And how I'm going to sell that, what term it's going to be allowed to finance for, what's the end payment going to be, and who's the buyer, right? So I love a good, 2020 EcoBoost Mustang that's going to go to a first-time buyer for the $25,000 range. Somebody can afford that payment on maybe an entry-level job, something like that. And that's a really good value for me. That's going to create a long-term customer for me. That's somebody who's going to gain brand loyalty because, I was the one that helped them bought their first car. So that's a car I'm going to pay up on. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to get the cost of acquiring a new customer is so much greater than the gross I might have lost if I had tried to rip that trade.
And I'm glad you said it just like that, because I think it's actually twofold to that. You got the first piece of it, and I want people to understand the second piece, the cost of acquiring that customer and how much it costs. The other piece of that I think people need to realize is the cost of that lost customer, because once they left, now you have to talk about how much does it take to get them back, right? You had them there. It cost you nothing to get them there. And now you have to get them back. And how much are you spending, whether it be remarketing, advertising dollars, things that is. So when you look at that, and I think that's interesting because, guys, this is why I wanted Missy on here. This is a person, okay, so that we all understand where these different dynamics come from, because this also kind of goes into why you should be looking for these unique type of individuals. Is Missy wasn't the old school car dog like that's done. They like saw the 70s and 80s and early 90s and saw all the, we'll say, not so positive situations the auto industry created. She came in and it was all about her personality, how she talked to customers. And so now when she's now moved up, she's trained this type of thought process. She's now purveying that as a GSM. And what's interesting about it is like she understands if you're building a business, you can't build something if you don't have customers, if they don't want to come back to you. She's building it like when she looks at these things, this is kind of the difference in the experience-based thought and the results-based thought. Results are like, I'm here for today, I need it today. The experience-based thought is really I'm building it like, yeah, I want it today. I'm not like ignoring that, but I also need to understand I need it 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 4 years. Like, I need people coming back to me. Otherwise, I'm just really spending money.
In addition to that, I feel really connected to the community of people that live on a budget and like a really strict budget, right? Like people that don't have a lot of extra money. We're in the transportation business. We solve problems. We solve the problem of how do you get to work so you can get money, so you can feed your family. And I feel really connected to that community. People that come into the store and buy our higher end products and stroke a check for it are super valuable, and I love them to death, and they're super fun to get to know. And I don't want to discount that at all. I love those people as well, but they're not why I'm in this business. Anybody can do that job. Anybody can provide those people with a great experience. I care about the single mom who's driving a car that has 155,000 miles on it. She probably still owes a little bit of money on it. She's got 2 car seats in the back, and she is paycheck to paycheck, and it's starting to break down. And when I can help her get out of that car, and then if the salespeople are trained properly and they know what to look for, and get her into a car where she doesn't have to budget for maintenance or repairs, because maybe we've been able to include some of that into her payment, or it was certified pre-owned, so it came with some of that. And so, at least for the next 2 or 3 years, she's worry free. She just pays that payment. That car's going to get her to work and back. It's not going to not start when she goes out to the driveway to take her kids to school. Like, that's important to me. And that's what used cars are all about. And that is my favorite thing to do. And we do it 15 times a week if we're lucky.
And I think that's interesting, right? Because at the core of what you're saying is, yeah, I get it. Someone comes in to buy a Raptor Bronco that's $120,000, because I know those are like the kind of crown jewel or a Raptor.
They're so fun.
Yeah, they're great. I actually think I don't like the look of the Bronco, but that Raptor one, oh my Lord, man, that thing looks so good. And tough.
I'm on my 4th Bronco.
But when you look at it, you're like, yeah, the guy who has $120K to write a check for, you're like, yeah, listen, that's anyone can do that. He knows what he wants. He comes in there. But so I was talking to some other guests, and as people watch these, they'll see is, what are you doing for your community, right? Because that's part of the experience. And like saying that, one, we could feel the passion, right? Your eyes lit up, everything. But it's when people understand that about you, and that your people understand that that's what you've now taught them, you've got them to understand that it's about that experience, that they come back, that they talk. Well, we all know. And if you don't, free lesson, guys, word of mouth is still the strongest form of advertising there is. It's just the hardest thing to track. I take it back. It's the second thing is hardest to track is TV. Yeah, that's fugazi too. Okay. They can give you all the Nielsen ratings you want and doesn't do anything for you. But that's just my opinion. Okay. Listen, what do I know? But when we talk about word of mouth, when people give referrals, right, or testimonials, then all of a sudden they're like, wow, because they give back. You're in the community. You helped someone. And that person that you're talking about, the single mom, single dad, it doesn't matter, right? We don't care. But
there's a lot of retired people that are on fixed incomes that need cars to get to their doctor's appointments, and they really struggle, and they don't know where to start, and they don't know who to ask for help. And there's just something that feels really, really good about having a used car inventory that can help people who are on a budget.
Well, if it's used or new, right? Used is obviously
either way.
It's typically more affordable unless there's some kind of subvented rate or whatever it may be. But when you look at that, let's use the retired person, the single mom, the guy who's just grinding out. It doesn't much matter. Can you imagine? Just think about that, like as an audience, right? Think about like how many times do you think that person says, like, man, you'll never believe this. I never thought I could get this. They helped me out. They bent over back. Like, that person, they may not leave a review for you. You have to ask. We already know that. The ones that love us, you have to ask them. But I promise you, they're always telling everyone else about it. And if someone has help, that's the business, right? But I've rarely seen dealerships actually advertise that, use that, not as leverage, but like that's your core statement of understanding. Like, we want to be embed. We want to be enthralled in the community. And then we know the results come. And this is why I believe it happens. So I'm a big guy about process, all the stuff that I do. So when I build buying centers for people.
You taught me that. Yes, I agree.
Right. Street Smarts is a process-based system. The Mastermind is an education-based process so that you can learn these things. But it's consistency. And we know, and when I say we, the industry knows, that the only thing dealerships are typically consistent at is inconsistency. And they make these radical changes or these reactive changes. And I think what we're talking about right now is, well, if you're consistent to that and you believe in it, like truly, like this is what we're about. I think the reason we don't see people use that in the sense of their messaging, their advertising, and really get into that is because of the consistency of it. Like once you say that, like once you put that there on a billboard, once you put that out online, that you can't be any other way. You can't decide today we're like, oh, we're going to do things differently. No, you've now said that's who you are. And I did a video a while back about there's, 3 things true in life, right? We know 2 of them, right? Death and taxes. They're coming. And if you live in California, it's death, taxes, more taxes, gas taxes, more taxes. And you just keep going down. But the third thing to be true is your name, right? You have your name. You're born with it, right? And you die with it. And it's at the end of the day, it's like if you lie to people or you misrepresent yourself, that's what your name is. If you're trustworthy, passionate, things that's what your name is. And I think that's the thing with that dealers kind of miss is the experience part of it is what do you stand for? I talked to one dealer and I did a meeting about this and it was interesting. I still to this day, this dealer, I kind of want to work for him. I don't because I work for myself, but he said, I'm training him on a process. And he says, yeah, our core mission statement here is our people first, our customer second, our profits third. At first, I said, whoa, can you repeat that for me? Because in all fairness, I was blown away. I'm talking to the owner, and he said his profits are his third option. Like, I've never talked to an owner that are like, yeah, profits, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And he said, our people first. And so when he said that people, customer, and profits, I was like, man, even if you're lying to me, I want to come work for you.
It's
because
true.
It's the first person I'd ever heard actually say that. I got an opportunity to train his staff because that's one of my clients. And talking to them, he wasn't on the call anymore. I had one-on-one calls with them. They echoed the exact same thing. He's like, this is what he does for us. We get this, we get that, we get this, we get that. These are things that there's no chance dealers would do. I mean, like everyone comes in after their first year, 4 weeks of vacation. I mean, it's like crazy stuff. Like, and you're just going like this, whoa. Like, and it's not crazy. It was just, we don't see it, right? And so when I look at this experience part of it and the connection is how do we connect with our customers, right? That's important because that's our business model. But I want to kind of shift a little bit because I'm a big component in used cars because it touches so many things. It's one of those things that's so fickle and messy of like, how do we deal with it and what do we do? How do we hone it in? And that's where I really specialize. But what are we doing with that experience and connection part of the business for our internal staff? Like, what are we doing and we talked today about a story. We don't have to mention any other stores, but like creating that experience to where people don't go anywhere, where they feel embodied, where they feel empowered, or they feel wanted. Because I think we always talk about what we need to provide to our customers, which I think we should. Like that is a business model we have to understand and know. But how hard is it to tell you, me, and go like this, all right, Missy, I need you to go out there and give it 100% in a red carpet service. And that person does not like their job because we do not treat them the same way we treat our.
It's totally true. Something that's in our mission statement, our owner decided to put in, and I think this is like probably my favorite thing at our dealership that our owner kind of puts forth is he says, it is my mission to make your job easier and easier to do business. And that's a really important thing because you just talked about your name, right? So I'm out there, I'm trying to sell a car and it's my name that's on it ultimately, right? If I'm the salesperson and I'm telling this person, hey, you should buy this car. It's a great car. And I go to start it and I can't start it. Well, why can't I start it? Well, because it's sitting out there because it's been dead. Okay. The battery's dead because it's been sitting. Okay. So how many owners do you know that won't buy a jumper box for their people, or they don't know where their jumper box is, or they won't have a porter that, will help start the cars and keep them going so that this doesn't happen for the salesperson. I think it's really important that we make it easy for the salespeople to do business because it is their name that's on the sale. And then that makes it easier for them to gain future business. So Jump boxes are important to me. Porters are important to me. Process is important to me to make sure that the cars light up every time you try to start them. It's important to me that they're organized. It's important to me that they have hang tags in them so that we know how much we're selling them for. And there isn't any discrepancies there. And it's important to me that we make it easier and easier every day for our salespeople to do business. And when we do that, that helps them build their name so that eventually they can be in the same position that, either you or I are in, if that's what they aspire to be. But they're not going to get there without our help, in theory. But it's my mission to make it easier and easier for them to do that. And then ultimately, that's going to give the guest a better experience as well. And every day when I'm trying to make a hard decision, the first question I ask myself is, what's best for the guest? And then the second question I ask myself is, am I taking care of the salesperson? Am I taking care of both of these people? If I'm taking care of both of these people, I'll sleep like a baby at night. And that's what I do. I sleep like a baby every night.
And I think, I love you saying that, because in all fairness, like, I am big about empowering people and giving them things, and coaching, right? Like you said, maybe 1 out of 10, they're going to get there because they have that grind and they're like, they don't need anyone. They're just they just champion everything they do. But the 9 out of 10 people, it's like, I've seen, like you said, and we talked about this earlier, and I think it's funny because we were kind of joking about it. It's like, but why would anyone ever leave the auto industry? When you think about the income, you don't even have to graduate high school. You don't need a college diploma. You can come in, and if you're hardworking and can show up on time and do some very basic requests, you can have a career. And maybe you're not going to hit the top of it, but you're going to be able to have a sustainable career if you don't put in any extra effort, just do the job.
Absolutely.
But people always say, like, well, why would they leave then? I'm like, well, I believe it's that experience in the store, or the coaching or the empowerment or whatever word people want to use, whatever, hot word that they want to use, is what are you doing for that person to feel that they're wanted and needed?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean the ones that, let's get real. Sometimes we have to acknowledge we made a bad hire. They are not the right fit for the team. They could be a great person, but for the team we've built, they are not a good fit. And it
happens, and that's tough. That is tough.
You've got to say, you know what? You're a great person, just not for this team, right? It's time to dust away. And that's where I'm a big component of, like, hire slow, fire fast. Because if I did make a mistake after the hiring, like, I put them through the ringer to get there, and then I made a mistake, we got to cut the cancer out right away. We can't let that metastasize. But if you get the right person, I can't tell you how many times I've seen buying centers, used cars people, new car people, manager, whatever, is they get thrown into a situation with no, we'll call it arm floaties or no survivor gear. And they go like this. They wonder why they're drowning in the deep water. More importantly, what I think is interesting is, case in point, like, you get thrown in a situation and they go, well, you're not performing, or you cost the store money. What'd you think was going to happen? You threw someone in there that had some aspiration, that said, hey, they wanted to do it. And they're soaking up knowledge, right? Like you said, you read books, you're doing all this, but they don't have anything practical. They don't have any coaching, and you wonder why they make mistakes. You're either going to pay for their education, pay for someone to help learn them, coach them, train them, or you're going to pay for it in profits in your store. You're losing that money one way or the other.
You know what you taught me? Like, this was like, I think the second week I ever sold cars. And I said, oh, well, I have this problem. You go, so? And I said, oh, well, I have this other problem. You go, so? I go, that car's over there at the other building. So? And then you said, don't let anything get in your way of selling a car. And to this day, I tell all of my new hires, you have my permission. Do not let anything get in your way of selling a car. Period. No check, no problem. We'll chase. No trade, no problem. Let's go get it. The car's not here. No problem. Let's find it. Oh, it's at the owner's house? No problem. We'll send the porter to go get it. Like, don't let anything get in your way of selling a car. And you have my permission. So did I tell you no? That's okay. Go ask another manager. You have my permission to not let anything get in your way of selling a car. Keep going until you can't go anymore.
But I think it's that, right? Is like, and mind you, and I'm glad she kind of told the story. Is like, so 2 weeks into the job, and mind you, Missy is not like somebody that's like, oh, I don't understand how to tie my shoes. Missy is extremely intelligent. She always has been. But the store that we were at, and will remain nameless, may or may not have been is apt to embrace some of the more processed style things. because of the other managers that were there. Now, believe it or not, it was actually in transition of ownership, and the person buying the store actually he was all about trying to change that. But some of the people that were left over were this is how we do it. And the way they did it was sitting in a chair, telling people how to do it. And I was more of like, hey, if I don't have time or I've got other stuff going on, you can do whatever you need to do, because I'm only one guy. I can't, like she said, I can't jump a car, get a car, do this, do that. But I'm going to tell you, you can make everyone else work for you, because right now you're the most important person in the store. Why was that important? Well, at the end of the day, I knew it cost at that point $600 and some odd to get the customer there, right? Based on advertising. And then I knew, okay, if we sold these cars, what we made, and I knew our trade rate. So I knew all these. And why would I ever tell someone that we've hired, right? Especially someone new, hey, by the way, this is a really tough job because we're going to deal with customers that may or may not be realistic or open to negotiations. And then say, on top of that, we're going to go ahead and take that you're not used to. We're going to throw that on your plate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go throw about 6 to 25 roadblocks in front of you just to see if you're good at hurdles.
Right.
And then say, I don't understand, Missy. Why did you not sell any cars the first month? Like we do it to ourselves. Like it's almost like trying to figure out, I wonder if we can cause as much brain damage to ourselves as possible and then wonder what happened.
Right. And I feel like kids don't come on board, not kids, just adults too. I mean, people in general, they don't come on board with the level of accountability that you need to have if you're in sales, right? Like sales is like the highest accountability level job there is in the world, right? And so they don't come on board with that. They come on board and they kind of think everything is my fault, the dealership's fault. Every problem is my problem and the dealership's problem. So I know we keep talking about jumping cars. It's just an easy example, but I might have a new salesperson come on board and go, all your cars need to be jumped. Well, why is that? Well, that's because, accountability, right? Yeah. We have to do lot party. We have to start up the cars every day. We have to do these things to make sure that they keep running. We have to check the cars before our appointments get here. We've got to do things, right? There's some accountability there. And they learn accountability over time, and they learn how to overcome these roadblocks that are going to be thrown up in front of them over time. And, it's our job to teach them how to overcome objections. And it's our job to teach them how to be accountable, because they don't come on board knowing that. So we have to teach them accountability, but then also at the same time, make it easier to do business and take that accountability on our plate. And so when both of those things are happening at the same time, and they're accountable and we're accountable and we're working as a team, that's when it just pops off and it's like fireworks and everything's going great and everybody's having fun while they're doing business. And that's kind of my favorite place to live in right there.
Well, I think that's interesting. Like you say, that's like we have to teach people, and I want to spend a little bit of time there just because now we're in my sweet spot. That's what I like to do, but for a very different way. Like I'm not going to have a shameless plug. Street Smarts is right above me. Okay, shameless plug. But is when we're talking about teaching people, let's really talk about at the root of like when we're talking about training people, because here's where I think we have a real opportunity in the auto industry. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to work. Doesn't mean that it's infallible. It doesn't mean any of those things. Like, I'm not going to sit there and say like, oh yeah, this is super easy or whatever else. Is how many people, managers, right, as you guys are watching this, how many managers have been to any type of training? And I am not talking about webinar training from vAuto or from some other third-party site that they're like, well, yeah, I went through this certification class, so now I'm a master. Like I'm good at this. I'm talking about where talking to people, effective training tactics, implementation, and which is something I know you do, mostly because I keep seeing little videos of you actually doing it. You always have a coffee cup in your hand when you do it. It was like getting in the trenches and doing it with them. Because there's nothing worse than telling, right, than actually showing, right? And you can tell, you have to speak to them, then they need to hear it, then they need to do it, right? So that you're doing a visual, audio, and kinetic. But when you're thinking about that is, how many managers have actually went out and done like a Toastmasters or engaging people or human development? And if you say, well, no, I don't do any of that. So you're going to train people the way you were trained 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Like, let me ask you a question. 20 years ago, did we have text messaging? Yeah, it just started. Did we have video conferencing? Absolutely not, right? So when you think about it, it's like, as we've adapted to new technologies, and let's just use the word a much more sensitive culture. Okay. So that no one gets easily offended by the other word I wanted to use.
Yes.
Is we need to learn how to talk, and I shouldn't say talk, have conversations with people. But if you don't teach your people that because you're not evolving, then you're teaching people what you're comfortable in. And unfortunately, I wish people were all comfortable the way that I was taught in the car business, because I'd be like this: hey, man, shut up. Just take the deal. Sign here, press hard. It would be fantastic. I would never have to do anything different. However, every time I seem to say that, people go like this: I don't like you. They stand up and leave. I don't get it. I can't wrap my head around it.
I talk a lot about anxiety with salespeople, and I talk a lot about what anxiety means and what that means in relation to the car business. So your buyers have anxiety, right? They're making the biggest purchase they've made, like you talked about earlier, in the last 5 years of their life. It's a big deal. It's a budget. It's a problem. It's a huge amount of money. They have a lot of anxiety about the purchase of the vehicle. The salesperson has a ton of anxiety because they're worried that the customer is going to get up and leave and say no to the sale. So, the dealership is just flushed with anxiety everywhere you look. And one of the things I talk about a lot is that the solution to anxiety is knowing the answer to the problem. So anxiety means you don't know how this is going to end, whatever that situation is. You don't know how this movie is going to end. People that actually have diagnosed anxiety, they don't even like to watch movies generally because they don't know how the movie's going to end. But if you tell that person how the movie ends, they'll enjoy the movie. So the solution to anxiety is to know what the answer is at the end. So I tell the salespeople all the time, hey, today's going to end well for you. You're going to sell a car if you follow the process. Eliminates their anxiety. Then when the customer gets here, I tell the salesperson, hey, tell the customer, hey, today ends with you leaving the dealership with a car that has great fuel economy, solves all your problems, and gets you to work. All you have to do is say yes. And then we move on. But it's that communication is so key, and it completely eliminates anxiety. So if we can get to the point where we can communicate, again, face to face, not on text, that helps. I think we can eliminate the anxiety on both sides. And, that just ends well for everybody. Salesperson goes home, they get a sale, they make money, they feed their family. Customer goes home, they have a car that makes sense. It's not going to break down. That's going to get them to work. So it works for them. So it's just all good. Communication. How's the story end?
I think, you know what, guys, you guys saw me lift my hand and do this because we're going to drop a little mic in this on post, is that she does mic drop because I do training, teaching. Street Smarts has a web academy that is trade handling, acquisition, walk around, which there's nothing like this out there because there's psychology involved in it and what you're doing. Yeah. But like what you talked about is if you know that everyone has anxiety and it's one of those things that we know is known. Not everyone has it, but we know it's a pretty big stimulus now.
In California, I don't know what the rest of the country is like. I think the rest of the country is a little slower than California. It's a little bit different. But I think California is riddled with anxiety just because we have to deal with traffic and high taxes and high gas prices and high rent. And, our wages haven't really caught up with what's going on with inflation. The gas prices are national news in California. So I think that it's just in the air here. It's almost cool to have it, I think, in California. So,
well, and let's say it's not just California. I mean, there's other states similar to us, like New York. I mean, they're the East Coast, we're the left coast, right? And it's always that battle, but they're just as fast, right? It's just as moving, yeah. It's just stopping. I think middle America, probably is kind of like, but here's where I think it starts though, right? Because anxiety is a real conversation. Guys, listen, we went from experience to talking about something that could affect the experience. So you're wondering how we got to this? Because this is a real trigger in some areas. I think middle America doesn't deal with it for what Missy and I have been actually talking about. Connection. See, when I see Missy's eyes, I see her body language. I see that whether it's a video conference or a phone call, because I can hear tone inflection, it changes the dynamic. If I see a text, I don't know how many people I've actually talked to that go like this. They get anxiety because they don't know what the text means. And I'm going like, what do you like? I look at it again and I just go like this. How's your day? I don't know how she can perceive this, but apparently they're having a meltdown over that they think this is something else, which here's the thing. I'm not judging anyone. I'm not saying they're wrong. We're now in a world of where it is how it's perceived, not what is said. And so if we know that, like giving a simple tip and trick like that, guys, she gave you something that I'll be 100% honest, you'd probably pay $100,000 to go through a seminar to find out the one thing she just gave you in a sentence is you go in there and you tell them or you explain to them or have a conversation, because I'm more of a conversationalist, of this is what's going to happen. You tell your salespeople, hey guys, today is going to be a good day. You follow the process, you're going to be in a great position to sell a car. Okay. You tell the customer when they come in, what we're going to do is solve 2 or 3 things by doing this. And all you have to do is say yes. And you tell them it's going to be affordable. It's going to fit in your budget. It's going to serve your needs. Well, now they know you're going to make it that easy. The only disconnection now is if you say one thing and then you put them through the ringer and make it like the 1980s where you're like, okay, we're going to make it like a Suckers movie where you're like, we're going to let them sit there and bake for 6 hours and wonder what's going on. Right.
Right. And that's it. You know, when you talk about customer service and customer experience and surveys and things like that, we get feedback from our customers. Anybody that works at a franchise dealership does, right? We're measured by the customer and the guest experience. And one of the things, this is a little bit off topic, is that things take too long. But that's all based on perception, right? Like, how long do you think it should take? Like, because I'm in the business, I think a car deal should probably take 4 hours. Like, I'm just saying it takes 4 hours. Nobody likes to hear that, but it's true. Somebody that does this once a year, their perception might be that we should be able to accomplish everything we need to accomplish to sell a car in 1 hour. I think that's unrealistic. But again, it's about setting expectations, eliminating the anxiety, and saying, hey, this is what's coming next. So I like to do this. Even maybe I'm sitting with the customer. I'm not maybe the salesperson, but maybe I've become involved in the deal, and I'll say, hey, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go run your credit and get you approved. And in order to be able to get you the best rate possible, I'm going to need to spend some time doing that. I don't want to rush it. And then you leave here with a higher rate than what you deserve. Well, guess what? Now, all of a sudden, they're okay with sitting at the dealership for more than 1 hour, because now they know I'm working on their behalf, and that eliminates some of their anxiety about what I'm doing behind the scenes. So had I not said that, they would probably say, oh, well, she probably went back there to run my credit and she's probably trying to screw me over. No, I'm not. I'm taking my time so I can make sure that I get you the best rate possible for your credit worthiness so that you can leave here in the best car that fits your budget. And when I explain to them, that's what's taking the amount of time that it's taking, they relax, they feel better, they're happier about it. We just don't take the time to communicate that to people and to eliminate their anxieties that they have preconceived coming to the dealership.
Which I actually think that's actually a really good just point to take away right here is, guys, when you have that communication, and this goes back to training, guys, just so we're clear, like Missy could go do that as the GSM every time. She's the one where they do the introduction and she does that, which is great, right? Like I would profess that's awesome. But how hard is it to train your people to like have that constant education, put your phone down, be involved, but more importantly, let them know and why you're doing it, right? Not just because you're doing it because you have their best interest in mind. Is, okay, if you guys don't know what's going on in the industry and you guys been under a rock for the last 3 years, okay, I had a 2% on my house, right? My VA loan, 2%. And if you had an 800 score, you were probably 2.25. They were all that low. And my car deal was, the last one I financed, I think was a 1.9 rate or something like that for 72 months. I'm an 840 score. And I'll tell you right now, there's no such thing as any 2% rate anywhere for an 840 score. So rates are about triple what they were, even on good credit. Specifically on used, they can range, good God, I don't even know what they are right now. I think the lowest one's 6 and the highest one's 20, right? So
yeah.
But
yeah,
when
it would make you puke in your mouth a little bit, but it is what it is.
If my perception is that I only buy a car every 5, 6, 7 years, like, well, I got a 2% last time, so I'm going to get a 2% this time. Why would they know any different? They only do this every 6 years. And then you tell them they're getting a 7.99, they're going to lose their shit.
It happens.
Now, why? Well, because again, we didn't, and I like using this trigger word of anxiety because stress, anxiety, whatever people want to call it, but this is a real nomenclature of when they come in, there is anxieties built into this process. If you said, okay, guys, so a couple of things we're going to go over as you're writing them up and you educate them. We're going to go over the interest rates. We're going to go over this because I'm not sure if you're well aware. Interest rates have tripled because of all the dynamics. This is how we do things. It does take us a little time. If you're a very high credit score, it's going to take us a little less time. If you're in the average range, it's going to take us a little bit more time. And if you have a little bit lower credit score, don't worry. We have programs for that. It takes it. Well, now all of a sudden you've told them what, why, how, and then you have to have the check-ins, right? You can't just leave them in the easy bake oven. But again, that's that experience.
Well, and what's it show? It shows them that you care. And ultimately,
well, and then when you tell them, I think that's the missing piece too, right? When we're talking about experience, these are all little tips for giving people, right, guys? Like you get these for free, right? If you pay me for these, they're super expensive. So Missy, I keep telling her to stop giving this away for free. She does not listen. It's weird.
You just have to come work for me.
Yeah, right?
I'll teach you everything you need to know. Not you specifically, but your listeners.
But when you think about that is when you tell them, and again, don't use all these good things for evil, right? Because there are always those stores that go like, oh, that's a cool little trick or a tactic. And then they use it for evil, right? You're like the dark side in Star Force. Is you say, okay, look, we're getting you the best rate we can or the best rate that's available or whatever. Why we're doing this is so that you leave here with the best option. Now, you couple that with that immediate statement of this, guys, now what we could do is we could give you a rate we know we safely could secure, paper you up, finance you, send you, and then you got to come back, and we already know your time's important to you. You don't want to come back, or we don't want to have to do this more than one time, do you? And if they say, yeah, I don't care, okay, show them a rate and move online. But yeah, I don't want to do that. Well, now they understand what you're doing, right? Like you can't just tell them, hey, we're trying to get you the best rate. You're giving them the what you're doing, why you're doing it. And then if you haven't seen any of these podcasts, you will hear this in every podcast, guys, and everything I train. If you do not convey to your customers, your employees, and anyone else in life, what's in it for them in your messaging, they will not, for any reason, give an absolute shit what you're doing. They need to understand why it benefits them because that's just who we are.
Yep. Okay. What's it do for the customer? What's it mean for the customer?
This, well, so you're doing that and you're doing this, but why would you do that? Like not everyone understands all the moving pieces to a car business. So if you then show them what's in it for them, they're like, oh, I wouldn't have to come back. Oh, I wouldn't have to do this. Oh, if we don't secure this and we don't get it approved, there is a small possibility we would have to bring the car back. And they're like, oh, I don't want that. Well, now all of a sudden they're like, yeah, do what you need to do. I don't ever want to come back and do this again. Like I want to be done when I leave. All of a sudden they're like, okay, because again, you've taken the anxiety or the stress or we'll call it the shroud of deception, right? Like that some dealerships bake in that get away from it. If you've ever seen the difference between how you should do a trade and what we've done in business is, people still use a Foursquare. If you don't know what one of those are, it's just simple. Get a piece of paper, draw a line through it like a cross. That's a Foursquare. Some people have just made it pretty over the years. And we use the trade. And the reason I want to go into this is so you guys understand these experience things. You put in the trade, and this is how I was trained. They'd be like, okay, in the trade corner, $5,000 for the trade, which was like 20% what it was worth, right? And you'd walk out to the customer and they would just lose their mind. I mean, and we called it sticking them to the ceiling.
Yeah.
You'd stick them there and you'd have to pry them down. And then what do we do? Poor Missy, she would get the Foursquare and then we'd send it back out there and she'd go and work on the customer. And then she'd come back and say, no, they want $12,000 for their trade. So we're $7,000 away. And we'd send her back out there with her smile and be like, it's okay, listen, we'll do $5,500. And she'd be like this. She already knows. She's like, I might as well go jump off a roof. Like this is never going to work. So we're making anxiety for our salesperson because we're sending them into the depths of the ocean. And then the customer gets it and they go, absolutely not. They stand up, they lose their shit again. Well, now the customer sends you back and you're working it again. We do this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, depending on the dealer. This could go on all day. Now, let me tell you why this was so ineffective. And as you guys listen, you might want to write this down because this is going to be one of those. So if you don't know, Smartwolf's trademark phrase is the truth hurts only when it should. So when you get offended by this, you just heard a lot of truth. Is this. You conditioned the customer. You brought it on yourself. You did everything that you shouldn't have done and could have been avoided. And I'm going to tell you the 3 companies that thank you for this. If you would have said $5,000 and this was a bid figure from somewhere, you would have had validation. Doesn't mean they were going to take it, but you would have validation. But the fact that you went back and forth 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times and kept giving them more, you actually told the customer to keep saying no. You actually told them every time they say no, they get rewarded. You actually built this into your process, and then you wonder why the customer's saying no. So now we get to the car you want to sell them. They're going, no. Shit, every time I said no, I got more money for my trade. If I say no to their price, they'll lower it down. And then you wonder why customers are so combative. By the way, you did it to yourself. you're dumb.
Yep, I agree. 1000%.
If you went like this, and the 3 companies that appreciate you doing this, Kelley Blue Book, okay, Cars.com, and Edmunds, you know what they did? Is they said, oh, people will come to us to get a trade value to use against you because you're actually doing this silly nonsense. Had you actually been transparent from go and given them the real value, these companies never would have got any steam. Not as much as they have now. So when you think about it, it's like, if you know you can click on a button, CarMax, Carvana, Kelley Blue Book, Edmunds, AccuTrade, why would you sit there and try to think you're going to get it for $5,000 less? You know they're just going to go like this. They're going to get on their phone. We already know phone's an addiction. Everyone has one. They're right there. They're going like this. You're going to tell them $5,000, and they're going to go, no, Kelley Blue Book says it's worth whatever. And now you have another conversation. Again, if you haven't trained your people how to have that conversation or relieve that anxiety, now you've created another roadblock, right? So when we take this full circle of understanding the experience guide, it starts to train. It starts with the understanding of what you're doing, right? And where you want to be with your community. But then are you creating with your customer to ensure that you will relieve the anxiety, the stress? And you create it to where when they leave, you want to leave, make them leave or have them leave with nothing else other than like almost forced to tell people how great of an experience it is. Because then people are going to be like this when they need it, whether it be every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, depending on how people rotate through cars. They're going to be like, man, Joe always talks about this. Sally always says this. Like, what does your experience look like? How do you connect? And then do you have people, and here's the challenge, right? Because obviously you want to go work for Missy. She's going to show you all these things. That you don't want to come move to sunny California, okay? I completely understand because you want to keep more of your money. Is that, okay, do you have people like Missy in your business? Do you have people that go like this? Look, I get it. You want the results guy, the analytics guy. You need that. You need that blend of that team. But do you have that person, that champion, that rock star that's going to say, hey, look, we also need to focus as much on the experience with our people and our customers as we do on the result, because that's how we get there, right? You need the person that has the vision in order to get the focus, like to have that focus to get to the end, right? And I think that's kind of where you're that special brand, Missy. That's why I said you're a rock star. You just understood connection with people, right, was more important than, like, profit comes. The money comes when you create that connection. Like, you didn't need to focus on, we need to make 3,000 or 5,000 or no, it was like, if we create this experience, that will happen. And it happens all the time.
It does.
But if you don't relieve those anxieties or you don't create that great experience, I'll tell you what you definitely don't make. You don't make profit because you're grinding all day long on it.
Yep. I agree 1,000%. And I think that there's a certain point where, I don't know what the tipping point will be. I've had my theories over the years. When TrueCar first came to the table and I was selling cars at the time and I was an internet specialist and TrueCar was coming in and just undercutting everything. I mean, it was just obscene. And then, we have the auto and we have Kelley Blue Book and we have all these tools that tell us what cars are worth and what we should pay for them on trade. And you know who tells us this information? All these companies that don't own or sell cars, period. Kelley Blue Book doesn't own, there is no car lot in this country that is owned by Kelley Blue Book where they own a bunch of cars and then they turn around and sell them. So they've created a space for the consumer where they can sort of tell us how to do business, if you will. So I always kind of lead with, I explain to consumers, I was like, hey, we use Kelley Blue Book and I'm sure you do too. And when you're using it to buy a car, you're saying, okay, well, that's what I don't want to pay. I want to pay less than that because that means I'm getting a good deal. But then when you go to trade in a vehicle, you go, I want to get at least that because then I may need a good deal. And all of this information is coming from a company who doesn't own cars and they don't buy them and they don't sell them. So I think it's important that we recognize that as an industry. And I think someday we're going to get to a point where we're so transparent and so honest that those companies aren't going to need to exist anymore.
Now, listen, we all know that everyone has to have a pipe dream. And we obviously have now heard because if she thinks that Kelley Blue Book is going to magically disappear after 100 years in business, man, I'll tell you what, I love a dreamer.
I also thought at one point all internet leads would come from one source because they would just all buy each other up at a certain point.
Listen, from your lips to John Lennon's ears, man. We've got to love a dreamer right here. But no, but guys, I think what she's saying is like, understand that like that connection and that experience. Yeah, you have lead providers and they have insights and they have all the data and they give customers these things, and it could be KBB, CarMax, Carvana, all these things. However, at the end of the day, how many times, and ask yourself that question. I know the answer in the buying center that I'm sitting in and the buying centers that I've built, and there have been many of them, is they come in with that and you do the inspection, some changes. But again, you think about that is like, if they have the right experience, you created convenience, you created a time element, whatever it may be. How many times have you got it for less than that number because they don't want to deal with the hassle of all the other things, or they can't liquidate it to that person, or, and there's a lot of these moving pieces. Is if you have that experience and you go through it and they see that you're doing, like you're actually educating them to what you can do rather than what you can't, because that's the thing, right? We always tell them what we can't do. Why don't you tell them what you can and provide that experience? And then they go like this, let them make an educated decision. Maybe they could get more. Maybe. I have no idea. And I'm not going to argue semantics about it because that's all it would be. But if I give them the whole picture of this is what I can do and they feel good about the deal and they want to do it, that's at the end of the day, that's the experience. If we then say, yep, can't match that, can't honor that, can't do that, can't do this.
Not only what I can do, but what I'm happy to do and what I want to do for you.
Sure.
I think there's this part of salesmanship that's lacking, like enthusiasm, I guess you would say.
What?
But right, I know. But here's what I can do, Mr. Customer, and I want to do it and I'm happy to do it for you. And I think it'll help you out. And I really liked working with you. And I'm glad I got to meet you today. Those are all things people love to hear.
Yeah, everybody. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, okay, we'll say the majority, right? We'll use the, as you guys haven't seen it, it's a great podcast, New Heights with the Kelsey brothers, absolutely entertaining. But they talk about the 92 percenters, right? We always talk about the 80-20 rule, but it really is the 92 percenters, because the 8% of people that want to like just out here in space that want to like be different and wear socks with their Crocs and all that other weird stuff. Listen, those are the 8 percenters. But the 92% of us that understand that flip-flops and sandals don't need socks, okay, they want to be liked. They want to be accepted. They want to be wanted. Right. So when you pervade that, right, that's also part of that experience. And I want to just say thank you to everybody to take a moment to listen to this. I personally believe that Missy is one of the greatest people that I've ever had an opportunity to work with, talk to, and know. And as we can see, she rose from a lowly old salesperson to internet to finance to now GSM. I would imagine we're probably going to hear a shingle sometime in the future. We're him of a store and flipping everything on its head. And all I think to myself is selfishly is like, man, I look like a genius. Okay. I hired her. Okay. So we got to take wins in these little things. Okay. Like, so, but Missy, I appreciate you coming on. I'm hoping that we get to partner up on something here in the future, but I hope nothing but success for you. I know your team. There is no way they don't love working with you because your energy and spirit is infectious. I have the best team ever. I'm not going to lie. I have the best team ever. I mean, I don't want to agree with her because I think I have to, but listen, it's hard to, I don't want to argue with her either. She keeps proving me wrong all the time. But thank you for coming on, and we'll be talking soon. And you guys, hey, everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's series in the podcast, Taking It to the Streets with Missy Ballance. And listen, okay, if you heard anything that made you upset, that offended you, you took offense to, the truth hurts only when it should. And keep in mind, right, if you want to take back the streets and bring those profits back to you, okay, there's options out there. You can contact me. And if you are in the Northern California area and you want to work for a dynamic leader, listen, GSM, call Missy, because I promise you she's going to find a spot for you. I will. Absolutely. Signing off.